Here's a traditional Sufi story. The prophet Moses was walking along when he saw a man tumbling down a hill. It wasn't an elegant tumble. This was not acrobatics for this guy. And when the man came to a stop, Moses yelled to him, "What are you doing?" And the man said quite earnestly, "I'm praying." Moses shook his head woefully and said, "You don't pray like that. I'll teach you how to pray." So Moses taught the man how to pray correctly, and then happily continued on his way. And a while later, Moses was in a boat crossing the Red Sea. Now, I don't know if it was before or after he parted it, but he was crossing the Red Sea. And suddenly, through the gentle wind, he heard a calling voice behind him that was quickly getting closer. He turned to find the man he had taught to pray was running across the water, like running across the surface of the water, yelling, "Moses, Moses, stop! I forgot how you taught me to pray. Can you please teach me again?" And Moses looked at the man still running across the water and said, "Just go back to the way you were praying. It looks like it works." And there's another more contemporary story, also a Sufi tale, that's attributed to the Qadiri Rifai, which is an order of Sufis here in the United States. And before I tell you this story, you need to know that a sheikh is a teacher and a spiritual mentor, and a dervish is a student and a spiritual protege. One morning, a dervish was startled out of his sleep by a huge cacophony. His heart was racing, and he looked around his bedroom trying to figure out where the tumult was that woke him, but he couldn't see anything. And as the haze, the fog of sleep left him, he realized the commotion that woke him was going on inside his own body. There were two voices arguing loudly, one of them saying, "You should do this," and the other one just as loud saying, "You should do that." And the dervish was stunned and completely overwhelmed and couldn't for the life of him figure out which of the voices was his own and which was an intruder in his mind. The poor dervish was so confused, he had no idea who he was. So he got dressed quickly and he ran to his sheikh for help. After he explained as clearly as he could his confusion and fear, the sheikh told him, "The voices you heard in your heart are your nafs, the different parts of your ego. As you learn more about yourself, you can expect them to do a lot of arguing." And the dervish looked relieved, a little bit. But then the sheikh added, "By the way, both of the voices are yours." Have you ever faked something? Well, we all have, to varying degrees at different times in our lives. Maybe you've stretched the truth a bit on your resume and you're scrambling to make yourself appear as amazing as you presented yourself to be. More likely, though, you started a new job which is so complex and overwhelming that even though you are qualified, the learning curve is steep and you just feel incompetent. Now, that happens all the time. Researchers have done studies of competence and learned that people who feel incompetent are actually more competent than people who always think they've got everything under control. It makes sense when you think about it. If you feel incompetent, you're going to ask questions, heed advice, and even accept help as you learn to do your job better. But if you feel competent, you probably aren't going to do any of those things because you don't think you need to, even if you're wrong. It's a paradox. The competent sometimes feel incompetent, and the incompetent rarely feel that way. To me, there's a kind of grace in that paradox. It's a chance to show yourself a little compassion and give yourself the chance to notice the people around you who want you to succeed and want to help you so that you can all thrive. There are other times when you have to fake it. Like when you're a guest and your host serves something you really don't like. You want to be polite, you want to be kind. Or when you're with a group of people and they're all enjoying a concert or play and you really hate it, but you don't want to be the grumpy stick in the mud who tears down the things that others love. Maybe you have a lot of stress and challenges in your life and you just aren't happy at the moment, but you know acting upset and wallowing in negativity is counterproductive. When I was a kid, I learned early on that if I was feeling down and I listened to music that I liked, music that had a positive energy and an affirming message, after a while, I would actually start to feel better. When I worked in sales, I learned that before I ever picked up the phone to call somebody, even if it was to confront them about something, which I hate doing, I had to put on a smile, even a fake smile. And within seconds of them answering the phone, the smile would be real. A decade ago, I learned about the power of laughter. It was one of those April mornings when the weather was gloomy and wet, and I felt like I was coming down with a cold, and I just learned that I had to pay more income taxes than I thought was fair. I went to church not because I wanted to be there, but because I had a meeting after the service. And during the service, the minister did something completely unexpected. She told all of us to laugh. Even if we didn't feel like laughing, even though she hadn't said a thing that was funny, she expected us all to laugh. Even if it was just weak, artificial chuckling, we all had to do it. When everyone started laughing, I joined in. Ha 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 ha. Then miraculously, after only about 10 seconds or so, I was laughing, genuinely. The infectiousness of the laughter made it real. And my laughter grew as everyone else's laughter grew until it got to the point where it was hard for all of us to stop. Now, these are all examples of faking it till you make it. You might be surprised to know that faking it till you make it is actually a legitimate therapeutic tool recommended by psychologists in certain circumstances. It's especially effective, a lot of times, with folks who are shy, experiencing sadness or mild depression, or anyone who lives in the broad spectrum of neurodiversity. It's a form of imagining what or how you want to be and manifesting that vision into reality. According to licensed clinical social worker Amy Morin, a contributor with Psychology Today, if you want to feel happier, do what happy people do. Smile. If you want to get more work done, act as if you are a productive person. If you want to have more friends, act as if you are a friendly person. If you want to improve your relationship, practice being a good partner. She says that what we tend to do in situations where we feel uncomfortable is to not act until that point at which we start to feel more comfortable, which will probably never come. But research shows that changing your behavior first can change the way you think and feel. But faking until you make it doesn't always work. Author Laura Huang, a professor at Harvard Business School, tells of feeling unsure of herself as she entered college, majoring in electrical engineering. As one of only 4 women in the program, she was afraid of being stereotyped. So she just adopted the public persona of what she thought to be the typical self-assured male student. And it worked for a bit. But after a while, she started feeling more inadequate the more she pretended. Faking it wasn't any more effective later on when she entered the workplace either. And even though she doesn't say so, I would bet her classmates, teachers, and colleagues could all see right through her phoniness. Her act didn't fool her, and it didn't fool them. The truth is that researchers have found that this kind of posturing, this kind of attempt to be something they aren't, has negative effects on a lot of different kinds of people in particular settings, like women in science, technology, engineering, or math, like Professor Huang, or minorities in most workplaces and community organizations where the majority dominates. Faking it may make them feel better for a while, but over the long run, the consequences of inauthenticity can be devastating to their sense of self-worth. Even Amy Morin, the proponent of acting as if, acknowledges that you can't make yourself into something that you aren't. And the best thing we can do is to be authentic. While one part of me may be feeling like this is a legitimate tactic for success, the other part is telling me to run away as fast as I can. So I wondered, how can any of us effectively fake it till we make it? Psychologist John M. Grohol has 5 suggestions for things you can actually do to gain more confidence. First, act as if you are what you want to be. You'll stumble at first, of course, but the more you practice, the more you manifest your goals. And it turns out there's science behind forcing a smile. It's a principle called embodied cognition. Your physical state can impact your emotions. Faking a smile relaxes your vocal cords, makes you sound more friendly and open. Cheekbones going up soften your whole face. They make it relax. And that usually causes a mood swing. And laughing is the same way. Yes, it's infectious like yawning, but once you start, the effects are so positive you want it to continue. You can also fake your posture. If you're feeling down, tired, or blue, you're likely to slouch a bit. And believe it or not, slouching impairs mental cognition. So straightening up, lifting your chin, and being calmly mindful of your breath can make you feel a little better instantly. Now, this is going to sound completely off the wall. If you don't have an answer to some complex set of questions, just pretend you know the answer. About a decade ago, psychologists asked two groups of people to answer trivia questions. One group was told that the video monitor in front of them would flash the answer, but it would flash the answer too slow, too fast for them to perceive consciously what's on the screen, but slow enough for their subconscious to pick it up. The other group was told that the flashing light indicated that the question was complete. And really, all they were seeing was just random strings of letters. But the people who believed they had the answers were correct significantly more often than the other group. They were more confident, which bred more confidence. But as previous research showed, if they had too much confidence over a long period of time, they'd actually become less competent in their answers. The way I see it is that the risk is to just give in to the power of brainstorming. Throw ideas out there and let the creative energy build, at least for a little while, knowing that if you're wrong, it won't be the end of the world. And finally, if you're feeling stressed, like you couldn't possibly do everything you have to do, and the anxiety is only making things worse, just hug yourself. Wrap your arms around yourself for a good 30 seconds. And then throw your hands into the air and shout, "Wee!" Because seriously, you can't feel tense when you're shouting like a kid on a roller coaster. And this isn't all just postmodern, self-help, pop psychology blather either. It's timeless advice for a problem that has existed forever. A couple weeks ago, I talked about Moses and how he was resistant to being recruited into leadership, thinking he didn't have the skills or the credibility. The God of the Jewish people gave him all the knowledge and tools he would need, plus the mentorship of Aaron the Levite. But he still didn't think he could lead the people out of Egypt. Even if you, like me, don't really buy this story as factual, you have to admit this. Lacking confidence during times of crisis, times when we're all called into some form of leadership, is a problem that has been around forever. And that's the great thing about the Bible as literature. It names every condition in humanity it could at the time. And those issues are still with us. Now, in that story, Moses was pretty ordinary. He was conflicted by the voices in his head telling him different things about himself. He wanted change, but he also wanted to not change. And yet, by just going out there and doing it, faking confidence with a lot of help, because he knew he really didn't know what he was doing, he actually became confident. Mostly. Because even though he wasn't perfect, he became quite competent. The mythology of Moses embodies the image of just getting out there and doing whatever needs to be done. In that way, according to Bruce Feiler, he's America's prophet, the one mythical figure that inspired the American narrative of persistence and unity. Moses is a role model still. Because we're going to need persistence and unity in the coming years and months for two reasons. First, even though a lot of folks are feeling complacent with a new president in the Oval Office and less shenanigans on Twitter from that hallowed space, the divisions between us aren't getting any better. Are you worried that you'll never be able to respect that pinhead next door with the political sign that makes you want to vandalize it in the night? Instead of hatching a plan to destroy property, try imagining yourself as if you were the kind of person who can build bridges in that instance, even now. Smile before engaging. Stand up straight without looking menacing. And throw up your hands and say, "Wee!" when you can't change the mind of a conspiracy theorist. And second, it may feel like we're approaching the finish line of this pandemic, but we may not be. We probably aren't. At a time when we all just want this thing to be over, when we're tempted to go on vacation, gather with family at big events, and maybe even do something shocking like going to a theater or an indoor restaurant without a mask. The best tool we may have to make it through this, to the actual end, is to act as if we have the patience to make it. What's more, when this is all over, we're all going to feel like Moses. I can guarantee that God is not going to come down from heaven and call you into service by burning a bush and turning your hiking stick into a snake. But we're all going to have to figure out ways to navigate a world that is going to look completely different. The economy, the real estate market, and the stock market are going to feel long-term effects. And so consequently will our personal finances. Public gatherings are going to look different, including concerts, sporting events, festivals, theater, even congregational life. We're all going to face the difficulties, and we're all going to have to engage in some serious brainstorming, generating new ideas that address the changed landscape as we try to find our way through it. May we have the courage to fake it till we make it, and the competence to know when we're getting it wrong. Each month, we share our collection not dedicated to pledge fulfillment with an organization in the community. Each of these partner organizations share many of our most cherished values, and they involve people who are members of East Shore. This month, we're sharing resources with the Northeast Ohio Music Heritage Association, dedicated to the preservation and proliferation of traditional music. Neoma started when East Shore members were brainstorming about how to meet the needs of the wider community while increasing our visibility. The result was the Blue Sky Folk Festival, which eventually launched Neoma and more music venues across the region. So please, send in a check to East Shore so that we can share our resources with the organization that has brought so much joy to members of our congregation and music lovers across Ohio. make sure you write Neoma on the memo line. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for being here with us today. Our benediction this morning, our speaking of good words, is by Theodore Parker, a Unitarian minister who lived from 1810 to 1860. Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve, and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I'm sure it bends toward justice.
We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves in individual religious freedom, which transcends all creeds, not think alike, but to join together.